Hi, thanks for tuning in. My name is Stuart Johnson. Today we have a special guest, John Hamburger. John heads up Franchise Times Magazine and the Restaurant Finance Monitor, two of our leading trade publications in the industry. For almost 20 years now, he's sponsored two annual conferences, the Franchise Finance Conference in the spring and the Restaurant Finance Conference in the fall. Both are executive level conferences and forums for leaders in our industry across the country. If you're already watching this video, you probably know who John is, so it's a real treat to have him here today. In this segment, we're going to talk about franchise resales and why franchise resales matter to franchisors. They've always taken a back seat and often overlooked for the opportunity that it could present in terms of internal growth. Let's listen to John's comments on an expanded development approach that includes resales.
So much of franchising is wrapped up in trying to sell new units. You know, if you think about the way franchisors work, you know, they've got sales teams, they've got brokers. You know, their budgets are all directed towards selling new units, and the sale of new units is sexy, but a lot of times they neglect the existing units, and banks are taking a much more critical look at a franchise system, looking at the franchisor themselves to see whether or not it's something they want to lend into. And if they see a system where franchise units are closing, you know, they're not inclined to lend into that system. So that's where I think a resale program comes in and is very important to a franchisor.
Resales can be a part of a deliberate strategy. The least expensive way to expand your royalty stream is by growing sales at existing units.
The bedrock of any franchise system is its royalty income. If you take a look at most franchisors, they're not making money off of the franchise fees they collect. They're making money off of the royalties. If you take a look at the valuation of a franchise company, the majority of the valuation is based on that annuity or the royalty stream that the franchisor is getting. A franchisor needs to look at an exit strategy too, and how do they want to be perceived by an investor or another buyer? You know, do they want to be perceived by just building a lot of units and a lot of turnover, or do they want to be perceived as a system that has a bedrock of strong franchisees paying royalties consistently? A new franchisee might have growth designs on building additional units, whereas an existing franchisee may be tired of the system and doesn't want to build anymore. But so by focusing on resales and trying to bring new people into the system and controlling that process, you have an ability to bring in the types of franchisees that can grow and can expand your system.
I really connect with John's story because it's my story too. You know, in 1997 I bought an existing franchise business. In fact, it was distressed. It had been anemic in sales for some 8 years and almost given up by the franchise. I bought it for about 25% of what it would cost to buy it new. And in just a year and a half, we tripled revenues. Using a guerrilla marketing campaign, a local marketing strategy that really set the stage then for growth of 10 more stores in just 5 years, way ahead of my development schedule.
And there's an advantage to bringing in a new franchisee to purchase an existing unit. First of all, I think it's going to be easier to finance because of the history involved in the unit. And by bringing a new franchisee into an existing unit, that has some history and has some cash flow, and bringing the new blood in, I think you'd have a better chance of seeing that franchisee build an additional unit than trying to force a green franchisee into a brand new unit and hoping he'll succeed and hoping he'll build additional units. You might carry it a little bit further and say that equal weight should be given to the sale of existing franchise units, bringing new franchisees into the system, as opposed to just singly focusing out new unit development. If they were to focus more of their attention in the sale of existing units, they could accomplish a number of objectives. The first objective is that just by nature bringing new blood into the system, I think, is good for a franchise system. A lot of franchisees, when they've been in a system for a long time, become stale, you know, they become know-it-alls. They become very reluctant to try new things or to make new investments. But new franchisees can come into a system, they can take a look at, for instance, an existing unit and see where an upgrade, you know, it could be carpeting, it could be walls, it could be lighting. And they see those things where an existing franchisee who's been in the store for a long time, just it's become comfortable to them and they don't see sometimes the flaws. So it's always good to bring new blood into a system.
The franchisee and the franchisor should have a solid relationship in which people are talking about their long-term goals. As John will tell you, a resale process can simply be a part of every annual review that you should have with the franchisee.
Franchisors who focus solely on new unit development shouldn't be surprised if they start to see some problems creep up in their existing royalty stream if they don't take an active interest in their franchisees. I think franchisors look at the franchisee strictly from a qualitative standpoint. How are they serving the customer? But I think it's just as important for the franchisor to be involved with the franchisee in terms of how are they building value to their net worth? Are they building value to the business, value to the system? Well, I think a franchisor should always be evaluating the makeup of his franchisee group and determining what their life cycle is. And ranking them, rating them. You want that franchisee to run a good operation, but you would also like to see if that franchisee wants to expand and how they're doing financially. And I think an annual review is a good time for a franchisor to have a heart-to-heart talk with the franchisee to see whether or not the franchisee still has their heart in the business. And if they don't have their heart in the business, it's in the best interest of both parties for that franchisee to move along. But sometimes you can't just look at how that particular store or how those stores are doing, because today a lot of franchisees have multiple interests in other businesses. So it's important to take a look at the global, the global cash flow of that particular franchisee. That's the way banks are working today. I mean, when they make a loan on a particular franchise deal, they're looking at all of the aspects of that borrower, not just the specifics of that one particular investment. I think if the annual review is structured and the franchisor and the franchisee are talking frankly about the situation, about their business situation, I think they could tell, both of them can tell pretty quickly as to whether or not the franchisee is going to be an asset to the system or a liability to the system. And then I think it's in the franchisor's best interest to come up with a plan to move that franchisee out of the system. And that's where the opportunity of bringing new blood into the system comes in.
Having a deliberate sales strategy is merely a natural extension of that annual review. Both buyers and sellers have enormous resources at franchisesmartmarket.com. Following a step-by-step process, people get answers to questions more quickly and really accelerate the process and the exchange of information back and forth so that you reach a closing date and get to the end successfully. The boardroom is a virtual meeting space where you'll move the transaction forward with your buyer, but it also includes your team that are all involved in the transaction so that no one skips a beat. You'll be able to monitor the transaction as they go through step by step. Members at franchisesmartmarket.com have access to our valuation tool and in-depth instruction and walks you through a step-by-step process that just about anybody can do, and you can run different scenarios as often as you'd like. I want to thank John Hamburger for joining us today discussing resale strategies for franchisors. I encourage you to take just a few minutes to listen to another video we have, a success story with Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. If you or one of your franchisees has a story that you think is a great one for Franchise Smart Market, drop me a line. Thanks.